All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So, good evening. Thanks for coming to SecDSM. Want to just say a big shout out to our AB people, Jared. No. So, thanks for everything you do here. So, no small feat. So, I get to sit here and like listen to them and like, ooh, cool. No. So, and also, I wouldn't want to do that. No. So, tonight we're going to be talking about subdomain takeovers. So, it's a topic and a security vulnerability issue that a lot of people have heard about. What I'm seeing on the outside is a little bit of, so there's some really good defenses in place against it, but there's some gaps right now. So I wanted to kind of highlight those and just talk about the overall process and bring some understanding to that. So without further ado, so this is me. I do adversary emulation and simulation, red team, purple team. So employer is Wells Fargo, so I'm not here in any official capacity with them. So my opinion, yeah, let's throw that outside. So I will say, though, that there are a lot of open offensive and defensive security positions right now at Wells Fargo, so if you're interested in something like that, please come talk to me. All right, so what is a subdomain takeover? So I actually was going to pull in the CWE for the people to do compliance here, but so just basically it is a subdomain. It's a DNS record that you own that's pointed at a third-party resource, right? So it's a very common bug bounty. So if you have a bug bounty program at your company, odds are you probably had one of these get reported, and odds are you probably fixed it. So that's great, but what I see is that there's some gaps because of that, because of the way that that's approached. So bug bounty's great, all for bug bounty. So part of a couple of big bug bounty programs and work with some of the defensive teams on those too as well. But there are some issues as far as how some companies are handling that detection and actual remediation process. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. All right, so what is a subdomain takeover? So just wanted to kind of walk through this. So you can see here, so the company creates a DNS entry that's a CNAME alias to a third-party service, right? What often happens is they discontinue use of that. So common service that I've seen getting taken over is Heroku or something in Azure. So they destroy that resource record, and then they leave that DNS record hanging out there. And so what that allows is for an adversary to come in and register that record, and then I control that domain. So some of the risks to that, whoops. Oh, there we go. So, and the reason that works is because of the way that CNAMEs work. So if you are hitting that CNAME, you're only seeing that top-level DNS record. You're not actually seeing what's behind it. So it basically goes straight through, even through the browser. So if I do a takeover on one of your vulnerable domains, you have a user that pulls that up. It's going to say app, .yourdomain.com. So whatever that front-level CNAME record was. We won't get too far into the DNS portion of it. So a couple different potential security impacts to this. And you're probably already thinking a little bit about, yeah, I can think of some more. So cookie stealing is a big thing for subdomain takeovers. So for an example, I took over a subdomain for a large retailer that was like an ebook subdomain, and we were able to steal cookies from the primary domain. So we can take that and basically take over customer accounts. You can use that for a lot of different things. You can think of the potential impact to anything else that might be living on that top-level domain, right? So, and I will say, too, so that's due to the way that the RFC is structured and the way that it's interpreted. So there are potential ways around this that are being worked on currently in development. So there's a couple really good issues threads out on Google on Chrome as far as how they're looking to kind of like remediate this. But like cookies do not scope how you think that they scope. So take a look at that if you're a developer. Make sure that you dig into that and understand the potential repercussions on doing any kind of a subdomain or even a top-level domain scoping for your cookies. So it does not do what you think it does. Email hijacking. So if I do a subdomain takeover on a subdomain of your primary domain, I can actually send and receive email as your primary domain. It takes a little bit of work to get the mail flow to work properly. But just a matter of altering some headers, sending that mail out. So also, you can potentially even redirect mail, given the right circumstances too. So you can see here that for all the work that it takes to take down a DNS record, this can cause a lot of problems. So yeah, and then everything else that you could potentially do with a subdomain takeover. Phishing landing pages, been there, done that. So I've seen malware getting hosted out of .gov, .mil, a lot of corporation web pages, so because it's now attached to that brand and therefore trusted. I've used Subdoman Takeovers to route C2, which is really funny when the SOC looks at that traffic and they see a bunch of data flowing out to some random subdomain of theirs. So it's kind of confusing. So brand damage, right? So somebody gets a hold of one of your domains, that's very problematic. Anything that they put there is now associated with you, whether that's hosting malware, C2, whatever they're putting there. So phishing your customers to that domain that you own. So yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit just about the adversary process. So I know a lot of people are interested in bug bounty. So I've done a handful of these. Basically, from an adversary process, we don't know what you have in your internal, your DNS records, right? So we rely a lot on either brute force or passive collection. So there's a lot of really good passive collection sources out there that I can discover all your internal domains or your domains that you might not think other people would know about, right? So I've seen domains about anywhere from 6 to 8 levels deep that people are like, how did you get that? It's just like, yeah, you know, like it's not that hard really. If you have a certificate that gets created for one of those domains, it gets put on the cert list, and I can go out there and look up any certificate that's ever been issued for your entire domain. So Shodan, Census, DNS Dumpster, Rapid7 Sonar used to be one of my really big services that I use for security research in this area. So you can actually download everything that they've scanned out across the entire internet. I want to say that the last time I pulled down their A record list, it was 120 gigabytes compressed. So a lot of good stuff. So, and that's the entire internet. So I've done some of the scanning at scale, and I can tell you I'll usually pick like a TLD like .gov or .mil and work with some of those companies that don't have bug bounties on this. And there are a lot out there. You'd be surprised. So it's very, very common depending on the type of resources that people are using. I don't want to highlight any particular service, but if you use Azure at all for your back end, they're particularly kind of susceptible right now. It's not necessarily an issue with their particular type of resource, but it's just the way that they allow some of their resource creation to happen. It's not bad, it's just they're kind of a design choice. So, but anyway, brute force, active collection, a lot of different ways to get these records. So a lot of times I use the amass tool, which pulls together quite a few of these. You can feed API keys from a lot of these services and have it do that passive collection on the back end. So you can see that's me crawling my own domain. Oops, apparently I have 2 slides. So from there, basically, we're going to go through and look at, so a lot of people think like subdomain takeovers it's only like DNS level. It can actually be a third-party application sitting on the back end. So if you ever have if you've ever done a GitHub sites, GitHub.io site, those are vulnerable to subdomain takeover given the right conditions. So if you have a DNS entry that's pointed to something, you need to understand that if you take that service on the back end down, it's very likely that there's something that can be done with that on the back end. So I didn't pull the link into here, so these slides are going to be available on Discord. I'll pop them out there after tonight. But there's a couple of good resources. There's a couple GitHub repos that show a complete list of services that people have reported, so not all inclusive. I'll tell you that. There's a couple I know that are not on there. But just understand that the core of the problem isn't necessarily the service in the back. It's how we do the housekeeping with the DNS record, right? So and there's a lot of different tools that you can work to do the scanning for this. I've literally done it using a Bash or Python script. It's pretty simple. So a lot of times you're looking for the web content on a page, or it could be looking for the particular DNS request return that you get, depending on the takeover. So here's an example of just doing one for worksites.net. I'm going to pick on them for a second. Sorry, worksites. So here we look at the content that we're actually looking for. So I can just do a curl against all of your subdomains looking for that particular content or hash of it, which is a nice, faster way to do it, potentially. And then I know that that domain's vulnerable. So, and then from there, I can just go sign up for a particular resource, and then I am now, whatever dot your domain. So in this case, this is a couple mil domains did a takeover on. So I like to be fancy, and I like literally, no, that was totally me because I signed it. I can't take that back. So it also means that they get a lot less concerned that you're trying to take something like for real. I put my ID there. It's not bad, really. One thing I also see a lot from too. So there's a lot of organizations that are getting a lot more heavily into the cloud. And what that means is doing like full stack redeploys of your application. So they're actually tearing the application down and rebuilding it from the bottom up every time. You're doing that full code redeploy, right? So So some of the scenarios that I've worked with on this, doing adversary simulations, we actually sit and watch and figure out what people's deployment windows are, and then we wait for that record to go down, and then we take it while it's getting rebuilt. So that's fun. But just understand, we're going to talk a little bit about the defense around that and what things you can look for. So there's housekeeping that you want to do, and there's a lot of data that you can pull in to actually defend against this. So I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. So just some gaps. Again, we talked about that a little bit in the adversary process. So, right, we're relying on the domains that I can find, so which I can spend a lot of time looking for your domains. They change constantly. I used to do rapid 7 dumps, parse them out for a particular company. I'd get anywhere from 300 to 400 records changing a day. So, and then have to go through and check those. And that's not even looking into that like race condition, right? So the services cost money to keep registered. So a lot of companies are like, oh, I want to save $50. So like when I turn that VM off or something like that, and all of a sudden they now have that CNAME record sitting out there just hanging, right? I see a lot of development services where this happens because it's just a record. It's like dev.yourcompany.com. And, you know, we don't want to leave that spun up because it costs $2 a month, and, you know, that's ridiculous. And so they delete those resources. And then I can go in and swoop and grab your dev subdomain, which nobody cares because it's, dot whatever company, right? So, and one of the other things, too, so a lot of people, you know, we do, like Purple Team, we actually use those offensive tools to look for this. If somebody's taken your subdomain over, this tool is not going to come back saying that it's vulnerable to takeover because it's already been done, right? So that's something to be really cognizant of, and I've seen that a lot. So just because you're not getting a bug bounty hit on this, just because you are not getting this reported, doesn't mean that somebody hasn't already done it. So it's a big gap there because a lot of companies are very reliant right now on that bug bounty process for determining if something is vulnerable, and if no one's really looking into that, has this actually been taken over? So I've used that race condition multiple times, and I've seen companies go over a week before they realize something's going on with the domain. So if you can imagine having access to somebody's domain for over a week before they realize it, so that's a long troubleshooting process for deploying an application, I'm telling you. So, all right, so defending. Obviously, so we removed that affected DNS record, right? That's the common sense thing right here. So if we're tearing down that resource in the back end, we don't want to, there's no reason to have that record there. You can re-register the resource, right? But sometimes that's not an option. So, and the right way, which I'm going to get into a little bit later here, we're going to talk about just some of the data that we can collect and the questions that we can ask. So one of the big things I've seen, the issues, is that most people don't, a lot of companies centrally track their applications. I'm starting to see a little bit of purchase right now that should include SaaS applications. Even if it's a third-party application, it should be going into your asset database, your application management. Like, you should be able to tie that to something. So DNS entries should be tracked as an asset. So, and that means that they're probably going to, if you don't already have the templates set up for it, you're probably going to want to create that in your asset management to some degree. This takes a little bit of engineering up front, I'm going to tell you. So a lot of times I get a little pushback from system administrators on, like, I don't want to have to, like, parse through all of my DNS entries, but getting these into your asset management is vital for being able to quickly compare and contrast this and find out what you actually own and what you're no longer truly using. So absolutely vital, and that's probably the biggest issue that I see companies that consistently have this issue, is that they're not tracking these entries, they're not tying it to an application, right? So application lifecycle management has gotten really good, I think, for most companies. We're really good about deprovisioning assets, throwing stuff away. DNS entries, there's a big disconnect right now with this. So that's something that I really want to highlight. Excuse me. So, and I want to say, like, too, so a lot of times, you know, an attack comes out and, you know, sometimes there's not a lot we can do. You have to patch or nothing. So this is all something in-house controlled. This can be completely mitigated with the right controls in place without patching anything, right? This is literally just lifecycle management of a DNS record. So more defenses. So one of the biggest things I can say that's an annoyance for taking these over is putting them behind a load balancer. So that way that never goes away. So you'd be really surprised, though, about the number of applications that do not still sit behind load balancers for some reason. So it adds a little bit to your overall costs, but it gives you that ability to not have to worry about what's actually on the back end and being able to detach that. So if you can't get good lifecycle management going for your DNS, make sure that there's a load balancer in between there. Even if it does nothing else but throw the packet back there, that still makes it so I can't see what's behind it and what that's forwarding to. So, and again, inventory your DNS entries, attach these to applications. Already got the recommendation there. You want to compare these. So the organizations that I see doing successful defense around this are doing a contrast and compare, right? They're dumping their applications, they're dumping their DNS records, and then they're dumping their cloud resources and then going, yeah, we own this, we own this, we own this. This is all good. You know, these are all active records. This hasn't gone away. So if you think about all the moving parts and pieces, those are the things you want to be able to contrast and look at. So, yeah, and then so baking this all the way into actually doing monitoring around it, you want to be able to alert on this. So you want to have some kind of an automated process to look and check when there's a mismatch between this. And I can guarantee you, I have not stood up a single one of these yet that we didn't have a ton of false positives up front, just trying to figure things out and get everything squared away. But you still want to be able to do that and check on it, and that should be something also to defend against that potential race condition. You want to make sure that you can alert if there's something that doesn't match up on those records. So compare often. It's free-ish. So I cruised through that because I love you guys so much, and I was just trying to get some more social time. So I just wanted to open up. So if anyone has any questions, except James. No, James. Yeah. It requires a lot of stuff. And like if you have something that does like content monitoring for your website, you'd probably pick this up. So that's one of the controls I'll throw in the slide and pretend I talked about before. No, so content monitoring, like looking for changes. But then again, I've also mirrored that content, so that's not 100% accurate. So, yeah, Micah. Yeah, so another potential angle there. So it is real. So I will say though that there's free cert providers out there now. So because I'm a good bad guy, I sign all my stuff. So so yeah, like I have no HTTP out there. No, so it's possible to get free certs. So Let's Encrypt. I can get a valid Let's Encrypt. Just validating because I control that domain. So, but if it doesn't match your cert infrastructure, absolutely. So that's another potential point of detection. So. No 2 hours this time. No. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me and listening to me just cannonball through this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hunt me down after the fact. We can talk. So I've got war stories around this that are pretty fun. So, like, you can run C2 out of somebody's own subdomain for a couple months and they don't notice. So, but thank you, everyone.